Silence engulfed the command center of the Vanguard as it stealthily navigated the shadowy tendrils of the asteroid belt. The dim blue lights of the consoles cast spectral reflections on the faces of the crew, each member taut with anticipation, their eyes riveted on the glowing radars. "Status?" Captain Mia Reyes whispered, her voice barely piercing the stillness. "Zorathian scout ship approaching, Captain. Estimated range 500 kilometers and closing," Lieutenant Harrow responded, his fingers deftly moving across the sensor panel. Reyes leaned forward, her gaze fixed on the forward viewport. The vastness of space stretched before them, punctuated by the jagged forms of asteroids that provided both sanctuary and peril. "Prepare to execute silent drift. Use the asteroid's gravity. I want us invisible," she commanded, her tone resolute yet calm. The crew nodded in unison, and Ensign Cole, the navigator, gently adjusted the thrusters. The Vanguard began to glide silently, subtly altering its trajectory with the natural pull of a nearby asteroid. "Engage minimal power to the shields. Let's not give ourselves away," Reyes added, turning to monitor the ship's stealth systems. Suddenly, the proximity alarm emitted a soft, urgent beep. A holographic display sprang to life, illustrating the scout ship's trajectory intersecting with their own. The crew held their breath, watching as the Zorathian vessel drew nearer. Reyes stood beside the navigator, her presence reassuring. "Steady," she murmured. As the alien ship approached, it seemed to hesitate. A tense minute passed, then another. Finally, the scout ship adjusted its course, veering away from the Vanguard's concealed position. A collective sigh of relief whispered through the command center. "That was too close," muttered Harrow, wiping sweat from his brow. Reyes allowed herself a brief smile. "Good work, everyone. Stay sharp. We're not out of the woods yet," her eyes flicking back to the star map. "Let's find that weapon." Hours later, after ensuring they were no longer being pursued, Captain Mia Reyes gathered her team in the briefing room. The walls were lined with screens displaying ancient glyphs and star maps. "We have a lead on a potential game-changer, an ancient weapon left by a civilization long gone from this galaxy," Reyes explained, gesturing toward the holographic images of a desolate planet. "Intel suggests it's hidden on Dalara Phi, in the ruins marked as the Temple of Shadows." The crew leaned in, their earlier fears momentarily eclipsed by the prospect of newfound hope. "The Zorathians believe it's just a myth," she continued, "which means they won't see us coming." "How do we know this thing even works?" Sergeant Knox asked, his tone laced with skepticism. Reyes turned to the ship's historian, Dr. Eli Vance, who stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. "The relics we've examined emit a low-frequency signal consistent with quantum disruption technology. If the legends hold true, this weapon could neutralize Zorathian shields," he explained. The room buzzed with cautious optimism. Reyes clapped her hands once, commanding attention. "We depart at 0600. Harrow, you're with me. Knox, take point on the ground team. Dr. Vance, continue analyzing the data. I want no surprises." As dawn broke across the cosmos, the Vanguard descended into Dalara Phi's atmosphere. The planet was enveloped in thick clouds, which sporadically parted to reveal sprawling ruins overtaken by overgrown flora. They landed quietly in a clearing, the ruins casting ominous shadows in the fading light. Stepping onto the alien soil, Reyes led her team through the dense underbrush toward the temple. The air was heavy, laden with the scent of decay and the distant echoes of a civilization long vanished. Inside the temple, they navigated dark, narrow passages adorned with strange carvings and luminescent moss. Each step took them deeper into the heart of the ancient structure. "There," Dr. Vance exclaimed softly, pointing to a pedestal that cradled a metallic device, its surface etched with intricate patterns. Reyes approached, her hand hovering over the device. She glanced at her team, her expression resolute. "Let's see what secrets you hold," she murmured, and with a careful touch, she activated the ancient weapon. The device hummed to life, its core glowing with a pulsating light. The walls of the temple vibrated softly, dust cascading from the ceiling as if the planet itself was responding to the awakening of its hidden guardian. "Let's get this back to the Vanguard," Reyes said, a determined glint in her eye. "It's time to turn the tables." As they secured the device and made their way back to the ship, Reyes knew this was only the beginning. They had a real fight ahead of them, and for the first time in a long while there was a flicker of hope. The return journey to the Vanguard was charged with cautious optimism that permeated the dense, misty air of Dallara 5. Captain Mia Reyes, her hands firmly gripping the secure case containing the ancient weapon, led her team through the thick undergrowth with renewed purpose. Their steps, however, were laden with the weight of urgency. "Captain, our sensors are picking up something." "It's fast-moving," whispered Lieutenant Harrow, his eyes glued to the portable scanner that flickered intermittently with red alerts. The team halted, senses heightened, as the distant hum of engines grew discernibly closer. "Zorathian scouts," Sergeant Knox confirmed, peering through a handheld visor. "Looks like they picked up our trail. We need to move. Now." The group quickened their pace, weaving through the gnarled trees. The whirring grew louder, a stark contrast to their desperate silence. Reyes knew the thick foliage provided only minimal cover. They needed a diversion. "Knox, with me!" "Harrow, take the weapon straight to the ship. No detours," Reyes commanded, her voice low and urgent. "We'll circle back and cover you." Knox nodded, and without a word, he and Reyes veered off the path, drawing their blasters. As Harrow and the rest of the team hurried towards the landing site, Reyes and Knox prepared an ambush. Nestling themselves within a hollowed trunk, they waited, the silence between them heavy with unspoken fears. Two sleek Zorathian drones swooped in, their sensors scanning. As they hovered close, Reyes gave a sharp nod, and in unison, she and Knox unleashed a barrage of fire. One drone spiraled down, crashing into the underbrush with a fiery explosion. The second swerved, returning fire before darting away, presumably to call for reinforcements. "That'll give Harrow some time, but not enough." "Let's keep moving," Reyes said, her gaze tracking the direction of the escaping drone. They moved swiftly, circling back to protect their team's rear. But the Zorathians were relentless. Soon a ground patrol intercepted them, a skirmish erupting with ferocious intensity. Amidst the chaos, a stray shot hit Knox, who grunted in pain but kept firing. "Go, Mia! We can't let them get the weapon!" Knox shouted over the din, clutching his side but maintaining cover fire. Reyes hesitated, her loyalty torn between her comrade and her mission. With a heavy heart, she sprinted away, the sounds of battle echoing behind her. By the time Reyes reached the ship, her team had loaded the weapon aboard. Harrow met her at the ramp, his face grim. "We're ready to launch, but the Zorathians are closing in, Captain. We need to make a decision." Reyes looked back once towards the jungle, her decision clear. "Take us out, Harrow. We have what we came for." Knox knew the stakes. As the Vanguard lifted off, leaving behind the fiery chaos and their fallen comrade, Reyes's resolve hardened. The cost of their mission weighed heavily on her, a stark reminder of the war's brutality. The atmosphere aboard the Vanguard was thick with tension, as Captain Mia Reyes oversaw the integration of the ancient weapon into the ship's main arsenal. The engineers worked with feverish pace under her watchful eye, the urgency of their situation lending speed to their hands. "This needs to work," Dr. Vance muttered, his brow furrowed as he adjusted the weapon's alignment with the ship's energy core. "It will," Reyes replied, her voice imbued with more confidence than she felt. The memory of Knox's sacrifice fueled her determination. "Prepare for a test run. Target that derelict satellite nearby." The crew paused, their tasks momentarily forgotten, as they gathered around the main console. Harrow initiated the sequence, and the ship hummed with newfound power. Outside, the weapon charged, a brilliant aura enveloping its form, before releasing a concentrated beam of light that sliced through space, disintegrating the satellite into dust. A cheer erupted from the crew, the success of their test run a rare moment of triumph. "It works, Captain!" It really works, Harrow exclaimed, the relief palpable in his voice. Reyes allowed herself a small smile. Prepare to set course for the Zorathian border. It's time they learned what we're capable of. The vanguard moved stealthily towards the contested zone, the weapon now their ace in a high-stakes game of interstellar warfare. As they approached, the familiar silhouette of a Zorathian cruiser loomed ahead, its daunting size no longer as intimidating. "Engage the weapon, full power! Target their main shield generator," Reyes ordered, her gaze locked on the view screen. The Zorathian cruiser loomed large on the Vanguard's view screen, its formidable hull bristling with weaponry. Captain Mia Reyes watched with steely eyes as her crew readied the newly integrated ancient weapon. The air crackled with tension, each officer aware of the gravity of their next move. "Target locked, Captain! Awaiting your command," Harrow reported, his hand poised over the firing mechanism. Reyes nodded sharply. "Fire!" The ship shuddered slightly as the weapon unleashed a surge of energy, a brilliant stream of light piercing the void towards the Zorathian cruiser. The beam struck true, and for a moment, the enemy's shields flickered and waned, but unexpectedly, they held. "Report!" Reyes demanded, her brow furrowing. "They've adapted, Captain. It seems the cruiser was not as unprepared as we hoped. They're rerouting power to reinforce their shields," the technician explained, his voice tense. Reyes's jaw clenched. "All hands, prepare for counterattack. This isn't over." As if on cue, the Zorathian cruiser retaliated. A barrage of energy pulses rained down on the Vanguard, rocking the ship with violent tremors. Alarms blared, and the crew was thrown into a frenzy of activity, managing damage controls and coordinating return fire. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Sealing off now," a voice called out through the chaos. Reyes gripped the command console, steadying herself. "Divert power to shields. Keep our weapon online at all costs. We need to break through." The battle raged, a deadly dance of dodging lethal volleys and strategizing openings for attack. Amidst the fray, Reyes remained a pillar of resolve, her commands slicing through the din with precision. "Captain, we've sustained significant damage to our propulsion systems," Harrow shouted over the noise. Reyes's eyes darted to the damage reports flashing on her screen. They were sitting ducks if they couldn't maneuver. "Reroute all non-essential power to engines. Get us moving, even if it's just enough to keep us in the fight." The Vanguard limped through space, managing a slower yet strategic positioning that allowed them to continue firing on the Zorathian cruiser. With each exchange, the stakes rose, along with the casualty count. Finally, Reyes made a call. "Prepare to disengage. We'll regroup and reassess. We're not going to win this one by brute force." The retreat was a grueling maneuver, but necessary. As the Vanguard put distance between itself and the Zorathian cruiser, Reyes looked over her crew, her heart heavy with the cost of their escape. Recovering from their harrowing retreat, Captain Mia Reyes reviewed the star charts with her senior officers. Their options were dwindling, but Reyes wasn't ready to give up, not while they still had a chance. "What about the nebula of Tyrannus? Its magnetic storms could disrupt their sensors. We could lure them in," suggested Lieutenant Harrow, pointing to a cluster of celestial clouds on the screen. Reyes considered the nebula, its volatile nature a double-edged sword. "It's risky. Navigation would be a nightmare, and we'd be as blind as they are. But it could give us the cover we need to strike effectively," Harrow argued, his eyes alight with a tactical spark. Reyes nodded slowly. "Set course for the nebula of Tyrannus. Prepare all hands for a rough ride." As the Vanguard approached the nebula, the space around them began to churn with electromagnetic activity. The ship trembled under the forces, the crew's nerves stretched taut by the impending confrontation. "Zorathian fleet on approach, Captain." "They're following us in," announced Harrow, his voice steady despite the growing turbulence. "Good. Keep us on the edge of the nebula. Let's not dive deeper than we need to. Deploy mines at the entry point. Make it as welcoming as we can," Reyes instructed, a wry smile touching her lips. The Vanguard skirted the nebula's boundary, laying traps and preparing their ambush. Inside the nebula, visibility was near zero, sensors unreliable. It was a gambler's move, relying on instinct and the hope that the Zorathians' overconfidence would be their undoing. The enemy fleet entered the nebula, their outlines ghostly shadows on the Vanguard's monitors. As they hit the minefield, chaos erupted. The sound of explosions mingled with the crackling energy of the nebula, creating a disorienting cacophony. "Now! Hit them with everything we've got!" Reyes commanded, her voice cutting through the chaos with unwavering command. As the Zorathian ships reeled from the explosions, Captain Mia Reyes seized the moment. "Fire the weapon now," she ordered. The Vanguard, battered but unbroken, unleashed the full force of the ancient artifact. Energy surged through the nebula, turning the tide in a blinding flash of light. The aftermath was stark. Zorathian vessels, once symbols of dread, drifted aimlessly, disabled by the weapon's power. Reyes watched the view screen, her expression a mix of relief and sorrow for the heavy costs endured. "We did it, Captain! They're retreating!" Harrow exclaimed, disbelief mingling with triumph in his voice. Reyes nodded, allowing herself a moment to absorb the victory. "Signal all ships. Begin rescue and recovery operations. It's time to pick up the pieces and rebuild." As the crew busied themselves, Reyes stepped away from the chaos, gazing out at the stars. Humanity had not only survived, it had proven itself formidable. A new era beckoned, one of rebuilding and retribution, of forging alliances and redefining their place in the galaxy. "This is just the beginning," she murmured to herself, a resolute spark igniting in her eyes. The Vanguard set a course for home, its path illuminated by the dawn of a new age for humanity. Subscribe for more stories.